Okay, so it's 5 p.m, so that means it's time for our live stream with ocean scientists from the UWA Oceans Institute. So this is an ongoing series. It's normally at Wednesday at 11 o'clock, but today is a very special episode. For those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. And those that are returning, thank you for watching again. As usual, we'll have about an hour with our guests and we'll be chatting on a variety of topics from our first encounters to sharks to our most memorable fieldwork fails. So if you've ever wondered anything about sharks, now is your chance to ask one of us. We'll be having a casual chat. We also have Rob and Tina, the gurus from the Oceans Institute. They're behind the scenes as always. But apologies for the low quality of the internet, but please bear with us. So my name is Charlotte Birkmanis, and I'll be your host for Shark Tales, our chat today. A little bit about me. I grew up in Queensland. I've studied over 30 species of sharks and also the flat sharks, the rays. But I'm right now finalising my thesis on oceanic sharks, where they are, why they're there, and if there's more now than there used to be. So that's just a little bit about me to start.
Cool, I guess I'll go next. Hi everyone, my name's Emily Lester. I'm a PhD student at the University of Western Australia as well, but I actually grew up in the UK where I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I went to the Ningaloo Reef and I decided, no, you not want to be a lawyer, to spend more time in the ocean. And so I moved to Australia about 7 years ago to study sharks aggregating at the Ningaloo Reef, and I was looking at the impacts these species face, notably the injuries they can get from collisions with boats. And now I'm finishing up my PhD looking at reef sharks. So they're the smaller sharks you see on a coral reef, like black tips and white tips, and the interactions that these. That's me.
Sorry, we just broke up for a sec there. Hey guys, well, thanks for tuning in. My name is Hannah Calich, and I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I've done a bit of shark research in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Miami, Florida, and right now I'm coming to you from Perth, Australia, like a number of these other women. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Western Australia as well, and my research looks at identifying drivers of shark movement patterns. So why do we find these animals where we find them, and what are they doing when they're in certain habitats?
Beautiful. I'll take it away from here, Hannah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name's Lauren Peel, and I'm the project leader for the Manta Trust and Save Our Seas Foundation's Seychelles Manta Ray project. I finished my PhD at UWA last year after spending 4 years studying the movement patterns, feeding behaviour and population size of manta rays in Seychelles, with the overarching goal of better understanding the ecology of these amazing animals and also trying to figure out how we can better conserve their vulnerable populations. I've been obsessed with everything to do with the oceans and sharks since before I can imagine or remember. And my first exposure with shark research came from my honours year at UWA, where I studied the visual system or the eyes of Port Jackson sharks. So I was trying to figure out how they see the world around them and what that means for their behaviour. When I finished that work, I moved to South Africa for 2 years, where I worked with oceans research in Mossel Bay, and I helped out with a number of research projects there, including photo ID studies of white sharks, tracking dolphins and whales, monitoring intertidal invertebrate communities. So yeah, it's not just been manta rays the whole way, but it's been very much shark and ray obsessed my whole life. And now I'm still running the Seychelles Manta project, trying to get that moving forward as much as possible, with a driving passion to better understand where and why sharks are where they are, the ecological roles that they play, and how we can conserve their populations.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Sammy Andrzejaczek. I'm a postdoc at Stanford University, and where I'm working with Professor Barbara Block, looking at a lot of the movement of sharks, manta rays as well. I finished my PhD at the University of Western Australia over a year ago, where I worked with these lovely ladies. And I was working on the vertical movements of sharks, so how they moved up and down in the water column. So a lot of people think of how they move horizontally from like along a coastline or across the ocean. I was looking at up and down instead. I'm actually in Western Australia now. I got stuck here after a field trip in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and I can't really get back in the US at the moment, so I'm living out of my field suitcase at a friend's house. But I'm stoked to be here and be chatting with some of my favourite people.
Oh, that was so nice. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lucy Arrowsmith, and I'm originally from the UK, but I moved here to basically study whale sharks for my PhD. So I'm looking at their movement and behavioural patterns, how they move through the water column, and the energetic costs associated with these movements.
Great, thanks, everyone. And I'd just like to thank everyone on the chat. So yes, happy Earth Day.
That's awesome.
I know. Please, at any time, feel free to comment or ask us a question. We'd love to interact with you on this as well. But let's start at the very beginning. And I think we all have a pretty good story about when we saw our first shark. For me, it was when I was snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef, because I'm from Queensland. It was lucky enough to be on our doorstep. And I saw a little reef shark. And I remember being really surprised. It wasn't this great big monster that had been portrayed. It was actually quite timid and quite tiny. And the more I saw them, the more I learned. I was absolutely hooked. Sorry about the pun. And yeah, they're absolutely fascinating. And that's basically how I got into this. What about you guys?
My first shark, I didn't even realise it was a shark at the time. Was at Rottnest Island, and I was about 11 years old in Western Australia, and I was snorkeling with a friend, and I went through this little cave, and I came out and pretty much dive bombed on top of this flat, horny looking thing, and it was a wobbegong shark, which was really cool, but I had no idea. And then I got out of the water and I was like, oh, I saw this cool thing, and it turned out to be a shark. And then I was like, oh my God, I saw my first shark, and I didn't even know it was a shark. That was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
That's really cool.
My family for a long time talked about how there was only big reef sharks outside of Ningaloo. How you doing, Em? Sarah's sorry.
Well, hopefully
Anyway.
she catches up.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
we used to get told big sharks outside of the reef at Ningaloo, and I'll never forget the first time we saw a reef shark on the inside of the reef, and I basically followed straight after it. My dad was not far behind me, and I think that the tradition of me just following fish has continued forever. So, yeah.
That's nice. That's so cool.
That's really cool. I'll never forget the first time I went shark tagging. Do you guys remember those stories?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So I did my master's with Neil Hammerschlag at the University of Miami. And before you join the lab, you have to go out on what they call a trial trip, which is they bring you out on the boat and quite literally show you the ropes to make sure that you like the work and that you're okay with hard, dirty work in the sun and all this stuff. And I just remember the first animal we pulled in was a nurse shark. So here you guys call them tawny nurse sharks, but in the States we just call them nurse sharks. The first animal we brought in, I just remember being amazed by how strong and powerful they were. They're just pure muscle. And it was just a moment I'll never forget. So very cool.
Yeah, mine was also for the tagging was also a nurse shark, but it was one of those like nightmare experiences where it just wrapped itself round and round and round, and it was just like
The crocodile thing.
Oh, no.
Just stay still for 5 seconds and you'll be able to get out of this. And it was just like, nope, I'm not doing this.
Nah.
I remember mine was a lemon shark, and I remember we actually had the lines out and we were pulling them up, and I think we got a boot, and then we got, something like a tire, and then by the third time we're like, oh, whatever. And I think my experience of it's a shark was actually like, this great big noise at night and pulling it up, and yeah, it was amazing. And the same thing, it's how strong they are and how, when you look in their eyes, gives you goosebumps.
So cool.
I think the first time I did it, I was in the Northern Territory and they were like filming it, and I was like on a very like cleaned surface wearing my favorite white shirt, and then like I tagged a shark, and then they're like, okay, now we need better lights. We're going to do it again tomorrow. But the like deck is covered in chum and like fish guts, and so I had to like ruin my favorite shirt, and they had to film me acting, which no one really wants to see. Like
in your favorite
You
shirt,
were great,
right?
Sammy.
my favorite shirt.
Oh, no. Hey guys, sorry.
No, you go, Charlie.
I've got a question from the feed, so thank you very much. It's, have you noticed a change in shark community composition or decline in sharks over time?
It's a good question.
Your question, isn't it, Charlotte?
That's where you
My question? Well, I'm still working on that chapter. But yeah, definitely, at some places we have seen changes in the community composition, especially there's been a bit written on it about how larger sharks do seem to be declining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it also is very much location dependent too. Like one of my favourite memories from Seychelles is diving on those remote outer reefs, and the biomass on the reef is just insane. Like not just the number of fish, but how big they are and how big the schools are. and just having that distance from fishing pressure, just instantly you can see the difference. So yeah, I think it's very location dependent as well.
It is, and I think you're right that you can't talk about sharks as fish without other fish communities as part of the whole ecosystem. And I think we've got a couple of us that look at the whole ecosystems as well.
Mm-hmm.
What I was looking at. So we all go to conferences fairly regularly, or not as regularly as you would like, as well as the fieldwork. Does anyone have a notable conference that they would like to share?
It's got to be Sharks International, right?
God, I know.
The Olympics of shark conferences.
Oh my
It
goodness.
happens once every 4 years, and like all the shark nerds of the world get together and just have the best time. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I've only ever been to one of those, but I remember it was my first ever conference. So I was absolutely terrified because I walked onto this plane and I remember seeing like all of these people whose papers I'd read. And I remember being like too starstruck to function, but it was really nice to like get to know them and to go with Sammy and Lauren as well at the same time. It was just very, very exciting.
Yeah, that conference was insane. The flight to get the reference sharks, the most recent sharks, was in Brazil. So to get there from Perth, Sammy and I travelled together. We experienced a Friday that was 36 hours long because of how far we were travelling back through different time zones. And then, as Em said, we finally met up in Brazil, got onto this plane full of people we've looked up to for years to go to this conference we were excited for years. I am pretty sure I cried at the registration desk when I picked up my badge.
I
remember that. It was just amazing. And everyone did such a good job. And it was such an exciting few days of just meeting amazing researchers and talking science and conservation and, highlight. Massive.
Yeah, it was so much fun. But I remember, like, I know we just had such a good time, and everyone, like, the shark community is amazing and great to hang out with. But like, you kind of forget at times and relax, and you're like with all these big dog scientists, and you do something super embarrassing, like, I don't know, like snorting really loudly in a plenary talk.
Okay, that's a tame story. Let's not tell anyone else.
Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, there was like the same at like the whale shark conference, so it was just amazing to literally be, like I said, on the plane with so many people that you admired. And then when they were doing their like opening talks, you just sit there and you're like, oh my god, that's that person, oh my god, there's that person.
I know.
It's like the biggest fangirl ever, but at the same time you're like, be cool.
I'm one of them.
But then you talk to them and they're so lovely, and they just want to chat to you as well and hear your ideas. And they're just people. You're also really nerdy. It's really fun.
I think that was the biggest shock. It was literally being like, okay, I'm going to build up all this courage and I'm going to go talk to my idol. And then you go and talk to them. They're like, I'm going to go to the pub later. And you're like, oh, people do that. Okay.
The cool thing about that conference too was that there was so much engagement with like tourism operators and things like that. So it wasn't just go to a venue and talk to other academics. There was so much engagement from the general public and people who also make their living working with these animals. And we all got to go and experience the whale shark trip, and it gave such a nice perspective to the research as well as the other parts of conservation that needs to come into it.
Very true. We've got another question. Do sharks learn behaviour from other sharks or from past experience? Who would like to answer that one? Thanks, Wade. And keep the questions coming. Keep us on our toes. We don't know what's coming next.
I have a short and sweet answer. I know that there's some research that's been done to suggest they do have the ability to learn from one another, like in terms of feeding experiments where they've seen another individual be successful. I would very much imagine, again, it comes down to the species of shark. So if you do have a species that encounters each other a lot, I would assume that learning behaviour from other individuals is a lot more common than, say, an open ocean pelagic shark that doesn't encounter other individuals as often. In those cases, I would imagine it's very much learning from what hasn't worked in the past. But that's just my take on that.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Lauren.
There's
social learning. Yeah, social learning with a lot of, especially there's been a lot of work done on juvenile lemon sharks. And in like nursery habitats where they're likely to see each other a lot, there's been a lot of research that's shown that they can learn from each other, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. And yeah, definitely do keep them coming. We're watching that now. As well as conferences, does anyone have any field work stories they'd like to share? Whether they're memorable because they're amazing, whether they're memorable because they weren't quite what you expected when you left?
I've got one. So a lot of my research used life-size models of sharks and other species to kind of see how these species interact in the field. And my life-size model of a shark that I borrowed off someone was fantastic. It looked just like a shark. And we had remoras tried attached to it and everything. But the only problem was it was made out of foam that was hollowed out. So it was really, really buoyant. And so to get this thing underwater, I'd sort of have to like jump in with it off the boat, wrestle with it at the surface. It had holes in it. So you had to let the air out of it like a water bottle, and it would just go like, blub, blub. And then eventually when it kind of got neutrally buoyant, there's a picture of it there. So when it got neutrally buoyant, I'd have to like sit on the damn thing and then we'd send together to set up the experiment. It was like super fun and the experiments worked really well. But I'm really glad that we're working in a remote location because I reckon I would have had some people call fisheries on me. They saw what we were up to.
Well,
Anyone else?
Yeah, it was last year when I got to see my first whale shark. I was in charge of photo ID. So I basically had to swim on either side of the whale shark and take a photo to identify it with its spots. But being the first time that I'd seen one, you think, they're big. And I literally got into the water and just cried into my mask and snorkel. The whale shark proceeded to swim past me and I was like, I've got a job to do. In tears at the fact that there was this just whale shark swimming along next to me. I was like, this is the best day.
Yeah, so tears of excitement, right?
Yeah, definitely. But it's just I have a job to do and I was like, I'm not doing it very well right now.
I'm just picturing you with your mask filling with tears. Trying to see
you were definitely not the only one on that trip who had an oh my god moment. No, I did the same thing, mantas at Daros. My fieldwork got delayed, I forget why now, and it was at least 15 months into my PhD until I got to go to Daros for the first time after writing permits and getting everything ready and getting all of my equipment sorted. And we landed on this tiny plane on a grass runway and went basically straight onto the boat to go for a manta dive. And I'd never swam with a manta before. I was just really excited to start collecting data. Was not prepared. Very emotional. I was slow to get a photo.
I think it's just because you're studying them and you've heard about them and you've admired them for so long, and then when you see it for the first time, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Takes your breath away.
Yeah. We never see barrel rolling at Daros. So mantas are filter feeders for anyone who's A, not swum with them, B, make sure you go and do it if you get the chance. And they open their mouth to filter plankton out of the water to feed. And usually they do this in a chain formation where they're one behind the other. But in some places they do barrel rolls because it's really efficient to do that. And I only got to see that towards the end of my PhD. And that was another sitting on the bottom of the ocean watching it, just in awe. It was, special.
So good. I'm so jealous.
I know. I'm pretty sure all of us would much rather be looking at sharks right now.
Yeah,
always. This is where we are. We've got another question. Someone that works in community and science engagement. They're wondering what people at home in these times can do to learn more and get involved with marine research, especially here in Western Australia.
Ooh. I mean, there's heaps of online resources available. It's kind of a little bit of a shameless plug for the lab I work in, or I work with. But Neil Hammerschlag's lab at the University of Miami, sharktagging.com, is a really good informational resource. There's heaps of papers, there's all sorts of photos and fun stuff to go on. You can also track the satellite tagged sharks in near real time, so you can see where a bunch of the animals are going. That's a good thing to entertain yourself with if you're looking to find some find some shark info these days. I'm sure there's other ideas, but that just came to my head.
Yeah, and there's also citizen science projects.
True, that's a good point.
There's Coral Watch, and there's also some others online. I think I saw on Facebook recently. So if you did a search, you'd probably find quite a few that are not only in Western Australia, but also around the world and other places.
Coral Watch is super important this year. It's been very warm in the marine environment.
How does Coral Watch...
Sorry, you go, Hannah.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. It's fine.
Well, I was just, does Coral Watch work with volunteers? Because I know a lot of people can't get to their field sites right now, and we can't do the monitoring work. So maybe if people are nearby, they can help out and take photos, or do the work that we can't get to.
Yeah, that's really good.
Within reason, social media is also quite a good way to learn. So we've got all of our Twitter handles on our screens. I don't know if you guys can see. Hopefully you can. But Twitter, especially for researchers, is actually a massive platform for sharing ideas and sharing research. And if you start following scientists you're interested in, feel free to contact them for copies of their papers if you're interested, or ask us questions. As you can tell, we're already excited to talk about what we do and what we're passionate about. So that's another option as well. If you're not sure where to start, we could probably find things that are tailored to what you're interested in, or just make suggestions from there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of online webinars like this at the moment, because usually we go to seminars at our universities once a week, but now they're all online, which is actually pretty cool because a lot more people can access them and view them. So there's a lot of different ways to view and learn online at the moment.
Also, I feel like art scientists as well, even though they might seem hard to approach, a lot of people love it if you ask them questions and that kind of thing, and they love to talk about what they do. So it'd be easy just to reach out to a few people, and you'd probably find that a lot of people would get back to you, especially if they, at the moment, if people have the time.
Sure.
Exactly.
Oh, we've got time.
If you ask a researcher what they do, make sure you have time to listen to the answer, because it probably takes 5 seconds.
Really good advice.
We've asked, again, someone's asked that what shark would we like to know more about? It's a personal question.
Everyone's just going to think about it for a second.
I think the basking shark, something about them intrigues me. When I was in the UK, I spent ages freezing on the deck of a boat, and I didn't see any. But I would like to know a lot more about them.
I'd like to know about white sharks. We know so much about them, but along the Western Australian coast, we really don't know a lot about them. I really want to know what they're feeding on, what they're doing, because places like California and South Africa, they aggregate around areas with huge sea lion colonies, and it's kind of obvious why they're there, but we also have populations here that it's a little less obvious why they're moving up and down our coastline, which I think is super interesting.
Even megamouth sharks, massive, and we know so little. A lot of what we know is just individuals that were washed up on shore or caught in fisheries, or we just have no idea what they're doing, where they are. It's basically every species, really. We'll probably all say yes.
Yeah, definitely going to have to go with my PhD species, whale sharks.
Also a good one. Any idea where they cut pollution?
Where is that?
So what advice would you have to give to students that wanted to have a career working with sharks and rays like you do? Thank you. That is an excellent question.
Probably the best thing that I did was placements. So in my undergrad, I was really lucky and got the chance. I actually found the poster on the back of a loo to go to the Bahamas. It was just really
everywhere.
And that opened up a lot of doors for me, because it turned out that my supervisor in the Bahamas was a student of my now current supervisor, and so that led to me half the reason why I managed to get myself here as well. So it's kind of putting yourself out there, and even if you just do loads of little jobs that might not seem like it's making a big difference, but it gets your name into places.
Yeah, I think also really saying yes to every opportunity. I remember going to the open day at UWA when I was in high school, and being I really want to study sharks. And they're like, cool, well, we study seagrass at the moment. And I think I talked to the wrong person. together for longer. But they told me to go to James Cook University in Queensland. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I moved over there, and then from then on, I like said yes to every trip, yes to every opportunity. And I'm still saying yes to everything, which is stupid because I don't have the time, but I just can't say no because like everything's so exciting.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. And my other piece of advice would also be to put yourself out there. Like, as much as it's important to say yes to opportunities, it's also important to ask for them to some extent. So when I was in South Africa, I was managing an internship program, and it makes a difference if the people who are helping out with the research ask if there's anything else that can be done, rather than just waiting to be told what to do. So showing that you're interested and talking with people and asking questions is really important as well. Not just for trying to find opportunities, but just sharing ideas. That's where those conversations come from.
Yeah. Building on that, something I've heard a lot of researchers talk about when students are applying for opportunities, just kind of building on what Lauren said, is if you're sending out emails and trying to inquire about possible positions or volunteering or master's, undergrad, honors, whatever, I think it's important to make sure that you don't just blindly say, hi, I like sharks and I want to work with sharks.
Yeah.
Do research and make sure that your email is targeting the researcher for what specifically what they research. So if you're interested in sat tags, say, I want to work with you because I'm interested in sat tags, or I'm interested in genetics, or I'm interested in population dynamics. If you don't know, that's fine, but target your emails to the person specifically, and without kind of the blind statement of I like sharks, because a lot of people like sharks, and it's going to set your application apart from a lot of the people that are just going to kind of say sharks. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
Also,
that's really good.
Like learning a little bit more about the person that you're sending the email to. So if you're sending it to someone that you've admired, or like I really, really want to work with that one person, then say, I've been looking at your work for this amount of time. I really want to work with you, because it gives people that like, oh, yay, this is what I want.
And especially if you can demonstrate it, like, like I liked this study you said, and blah blah blah, and
blanket emails aren't going to work.
No,
it's too competitive of a field for that.
And if you can afford to, I think saying yes to opportunities and volunteering if you can, if you have the means, or even it doesn't have to be in the field, it could be helping with looking at videos. We've got so many videos to look at, or even little things you can do just to help out, and you can see if research is actually something that is for you.
Yeah, even just like there's so many projects we want to do and we don't have time. Like, you run out of time rapidly. So if you're happy to help analyze data, that's probably going to go a long way too.
We would love you.
That's true, actually. I've got a master's student now. She's fantastic, and she's writing up a project I didn't have time to do in my PhD. So it's definitely worth approaching people, because we've got like projects coming out of our ears. It's waiting to be written up.
Exactly. Well, thank you. And we've also got another one. There's a representative of Women in Technology WA listening, so welcome, thank you. So they want to know, what's the coolest technology that we get to use in our research?
Well, Sammy has to take this.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Sammy.
I got really lucky with my PhD. We have these really cool new tags that, well, they're not as new anymore, but they have cameras on them, and we attach them to the dorsal fin of sharks. And they have a bunch of different sensors in them. They're like your mobile phone. They have like a compass, so you can kind of tell how the animal's moving. They have an accelerometer, which is like in your iPhone. When you turn your screen around, it can tell what side the screen is. It's like a Fitbit, basically. And we can get like energetics from the shark, how often it's beating its tail. So we've attached them. So in my PhD, I initially worked on tiger sharks, and then expanded to basking sharks and whale sharks and sandbar sharks and bull sharks. And it's really cool. But on the other side, you get the tag back, and you have hours and hours and hours of footage to watch. And for the most part, these animals are just going about their everyday lives, just swimming like this and making you really seasick and not doing anything exciting. And then you're like, turtle, and you have to write it down. But they're really cool. It's a really cool technology. You get like super cool insight into exactly what these animals are doing on a day-to-day basis. So we're kind of like calling it the secret lives of sharks when we put these tags out.
So cool.
Yeah, I think the tech is a really exciting part of what we get to do now. So not quite as cool as Sammy putting tags on actual animals. But one part of my research, we set up a remote camera at a manta cleaning station where we knew that animals would come all of the time. And we were able, through massive battery packs, to have it running consistently, essentially, for a month and a half. And doing that gave us, I think, a 20% expansion on our current database. We got ID photos, we captured images of pregnant females, all of these interactions that we would have had to sort of guess what time to get in the water and hope that our hour with our scuba tank would have made a difference, and we got to see it. So just the insight you get from not being in the water sometimes is so worth it.
Yeah. Even like all over the world now, they're starting to do like ultrasounds underwater, like with whale sharks.
Yeah.
So they've got
so
like
cool.
a tiny little.
They
like,
do them on tigers too.
And they just swim underneath them, and you can take an ultrasound, which is amazing to think that that is now becoming such a big part of marine biology. And like looking at, but you don't. It's not just looking at like pups and that kind of thing. They're also looking at like internal organs, like livers and that kind of thing, to look at the blood ratio as well. So I think that's really cool.
And the beating heart, that was amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Yeah, we put the heart rate tags on tuna in the tank at Hopkins, and it's just super cool. You get like an ECG from a tuna, and it's just
That's so
unreal.
cool.
But as well as high tech, we've also got low tech. I mean, in the field, we often use just GoPros, and that's what we use as well.
Yeah.
So it's also all different types. But also, we're moving on from that. We've also got someone asking exactly how you put a tag on a tiger shark.
Oh, so, it depends on the shark how we put a tag on. With tiger sharks, we have to catch them. So we just have a line in the water, we bring them alongside the boat, and surprisingly, like a 4-meter tiger shark will just chill out as soon as you have it next to the boat, and it just sits there, and you put the tag on and you release it, and it just swims off and keeps doing its everyday behavior. But then, like with other sharks, so white sharks, as they swim by, we have a pole to put the tags on them. With whale sharks, you can just swim straight on up to them and pop it on. So it just, with a tuna, like in that photo, we have to bring them on board and put the tag on. But
So cool.
It's species dependent.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's so big. It's crazy.
They're actually huge.
Yeah.
Tuna's a monster.
I will never forget the day you sent that photo through, and I was like, that can't be real.
I jumped in the water to like film its release, and it was just like insane. Like they're just biomechanically amazing tuna.
Yeah.
Just off sharks typically, but they're insane.
Yeah. Wow.
Talking about the big fish, do we have anyone who wants to share their scariest moment during fieldwork?
Who do you want to pick?
Not when it's recording. Yeah.
No?
I guess, like it's a bit of a lame story, but I remember like you know, with PhD budgets you haven't got much wiggle room, and I borrowed some GoPros for a few like specialized cameras that I was doing, and I pulled them up at the end of the deployment and realized that they had both flooded. And I was like, I can't afford to pay this person back. That was pretty scary. But yeah.
This is like when I put a tag on a tiger shark, and those camera tags were worth like $10,000. And it's I don't know why I got particularly excited about the shark, but I forgot to take the magnet off the VHF, so like the radio tracker. So like you have to like find the tag after you put it out, because you have to download the data from it. And we put it out, and I was like, I picked up the other tag and I looked at it and I was like, oh crap, like I put the wrong tag on. But like we got so lucky, it popped up right in front of a tourist boat, like looking at whale sharks.
You got lucky.
I
got so lucky.
But like
you always get lucky.
I called my supervisors and I was like, I'm so sorry, I've lost this $10,000 tag. It was like my second day of like my self-run field trip. And then it popped up and they're all like, you need to buy a lotto ticket. Like,
Yeah,
you see people.
You go.
When the tags pop off and they haven't quite made it close enough to land to go get them, and they're just floating just out of reach, and you can see it on the computer.
So close yet so far.
Lauren's life.
Literally my life. The ratio of land to ocean in Seychelles is not great. So surprisingly, I never got any of my tags back, but I had one get really close to the main island once, and it was within reach. And then whatever happened to it, an animal grabbed it at the surface and dove down with it to maybe 200 meters, which reset the timer on it transmitting. So when I got the data back, it passed by the island, got dropped down, and then kept drifting for 3 days, and then it was too far.
Oh no, that's so annoying.
But yeah, the joys.
Yeah. So does anyone have a sort of gross story about a field trip that they want to share? I can start with this one. The last one was slow to start. I can think of rotten Russian fish when you have the underwater cameras, as you know, that we drop down and you put bait on them at the front, which is often bits of fish. And if you're on a trip for a couple of weeks, by the end of that time, you really don't want to be smelling those fish guts anymore.
No. Especially kind of messed up, that smell.
Yeah.
That's in nostrils.
Skin, and you're just like, I still smell.
I know. And on your favourite shirt, hey.
You never wear favourite shirts when you're dealing with chum, but I actually don't mind the smell of chum because it usually means something epic's going to happen, but it's not, most people don't enjoy that smell.
Eventually it just gets so bad that you can't smell anything. It's just
That's the scary point, when you can't smell it or yourself, you don't realize how bad you stink.
You smell the same.
I remember this time I had been in Miami for like just a few weeks. And I was like I'd been less than 10 shark trips. So I was still pretty new to this. And it hadn't been a really gross day, average level gross. And friends of mine were having a barbecue after being on the boat. And I was like, okay, I'll come straight there. And I went home, dropped my stuff, and I looked down and I had a full scale from a barracuda, which is what we use as bait, in my hair. And I was like, no, I'm going to have to shower first, guys. I'm going to be late.
For the white sharks in California, we collect tiny bits of whale from like dead whales that wash up on the beach to kind of attract the sharks. And we had it in a bucket in the back of my boss's car, and we're like driving to the boat, and we went through a corner really tight, and my lab tech was in the back seat, and my boss was like, did the bucket fall over? And he was like, no. And he like picked it up and like closed the lid. And we got to Santa Cruz and got to the back, and it turned out he closed the lid, but the whale had fallen into the back of the car and just got everywhere. And like, I think she complained for weeks, just being like, no one's getting in my car, it stinks.
Whale doesn't go anywhere. Like, marine mammal is peak bad smells. It just doesn't go away.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, that's I made a special trip to go out and see that one because it was my first ever opportunity to see a whale carcass, and I went, and it smelled as bad as I thought it.
You're pretty brave not blocking your nose there.
There's other photos of me like this. But yeah.
So from whale smells leads to seasickness. Is it true that marine biologists don't get seasick?
No,
absolutely.
A resounding no.
I honestly think I have been sick every time I've gotten a boat, and that's even taking seasickness tablets. I get my sea legs after a couple of days. Yeah. But the worst time was last year, and I don't think I'd taken my seasickness tablets like right at the right moment. Like, got taken quite a bit before for me, and we saw 32 whale sharks and had to jump in the water 32 times. But every time I got back on the boat, I was throwing up in between. So I literally was just like the best and worst day being in the field, because I was just like, I have no energy. I can't do this, but I need to do this. Okay, we go again. And I think like everyone's got one of those like horrible stories which just puts you off it for life. But at the same time, you're like, best job I can do.
Yeah. I was like rationing my seasickness tablets in South Africa because I needed to take one every day. Like, I was skippering boats and I couldn't get sick. And after almost a year of working there, I got a chance to go to Durban and dive with the black-tip sharks. And I got so excited about the dive, I completely forgot we had to go on a boat to go on the dive. Oh. And I was so sick. But I was like in the water, like, this is amazing. Oh, no. Oh, great.
Yeah, I think that's when you're on a boat and it's rocking, and then you've got to like you work on a computer, or like, you're doing detail oriented stuff, you're gonna get sick. It just happens.
Writing data sheets.
Yeah.
And it's just looking at things about this close and you're like, oh, I should not be doing this. This is the last thing I should be doing.
Deep breaths, Horizon.
For us, it was always when we had to process blood work, because we would take blood samples in the field, and then we had like a little onboard blood lab where you would spin down the blood and take out plasma and stuff like that. But it was always really hot and in a really enclosed space, and you had to read really tiny measurements. And every time I had to do it, I was always like, oh, here we go.
So we've got another question. How much of your PhD time do you devote to science communication?
Do you want to take that, Charlie? I feel like that's definitely your forte.
Well, if my supervisor is listening, hardly any. But yeah, I think we all do a lot. I mean, just on Friday, I was talking to a young girl, and her name is also Charlotte. So hi, if you're watching. And she was basically just, asking about what it is, what it's like. And also, like most of us, we do a bit of talks and a bit of outreach. So how much time? I'd have to say it's probably inching up to, it's probably a weekly occurrence at least. And also there's things like Skype for scientists as well. So on the other hand, if obviously you're interested watching this, and if you want someone to talk to your kids or something, by all means send us a link on Twitter or to the Oceans Institute, because a lot of us are very willing and we really enjoy communicating sharks and what we do to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that pretty much. No, it really does.
We like to talk.
Yeah, I think it's also dependent on the deadlines you have coming up. I'm sure we'd all want to be able to do even more. But yeah, there is a decent chunk of time that goes into not only talking with kids and school groups and promoting your research, but getting papers ready to get shared. And a lot of papers now, when we get them published, there's a visual abstract that you have to make to share it. And we're, as scientists, not just scientists, we're writers and artists and graphic designers, and the list goes on when it comes to communication.
We try to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, whether or not we can actually do it, we have to
try.
Yeah, we have to wear a lot of hats, and I love SciComm, but yeah, it's just one of those things I haven't had time for quite a while now, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're nearly done though. It's going to be epic.
I think finishing up your PhD does that to you.
Yeah.
That's true. You don't have time for a lot of things.
So what about travel? Everyone thinks scientists travel all the time, but as Lauren and the others were saying, we spend a lot of time doing papers, doing research. But what is the best place you've traveled to for your research?
What's the best way to what?
What's the best place you've travelled to?
Oh, sorry.
For your research?
You were close.
Ningaloo has a real soft spot in my heart, but I have to say the best place was the Rolly Shoals. So it's a pretty remote reef system. If you go up to Broome, hop on a boat and travel about 200 kilometres out to Indonesia, you'll probably hit it. And it's, this really remote marine reserve, and it's absolutely amazing. It's got so many sharks. We saw loads of manta rays and like schools of fish. And I'd never seen anything like it before. It was really special, especially because I read loads of papers about this place too. So when I got to see it, it was a really cool moment. And I've got to think of some more experiments to run to get back out. It's been a while.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Mine would, again, Ningaloo was incredible, but it'd have to be the Bahamas. I think flying in, it was just like every possible shade of blue. And it was just incredible to see it. And we flew into one of like the third island off called Cape Luther. And yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget that. And that was to do shark and ray work out there. And that was just like, you're in shorts and t-shirt, like I dived without a wetsuit. Like it was just ideal. And it was just like the dream.
Yeah. Florida's got to have my heart in that aspect, actually. One thing that's kind of unique about the Florida Bahamas area is that you don't need to go super far away from civilization in order to see sharks. So we actually fish right off South Beach, right off the really, really populated areas in the city of Miami, and we can catch really big sharks, huge diversity of species. And it's just in your backyard, which is really incredible. So that's got my spot.
Yeah, I think for me, Ningaloo, again, I wouldn't be the person I was without Ningaloo and Coral Bay, and Mossel Bay as well is literally magic. But flying into Daros is I just don't have the words for it. It's like getting onto a plane you'd see in a Jurassic Park movie and landing on a grass runway that's a kilometre long and not knowing if the plane's going to stop before the end of the runway. We had to, like, I kid you not, as we landed on my second trip, we had to dodge a flock of birds. So even the landing was crazy. Got off the plane, walked to the research station. There was a nesting hawksbill turtle right in front of the office. We offloaded all of the gear, got into the water, and it's juvenile sharks, mantas, Napoleon wrasse. There's Aldabra tortoises on the island. There's the photo of the lagoon next door. So St. Joseph Atoll is full of juvenile sharks and rays and turtles, and the channel in the middle between them, like between Darras and St. Joe's, is 70 metres deep. So you have predatory fish, and I'm at a loss for words how special that place is. Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
What's yours, Charlie?
Mine would be the Chagos archipelago. I spent a couple of months there. I was lucky enough to do some research on shark and reef fish. And the same thing, it was amazing. The islands were lovely. It was a lot of sea time in the transit. And I finally got a photo of a flying fish. Which I won't say how many takes it took me to get that one, but I have one. And also, for me, a close second will be Papua New Guinea, having done some work there.
Ooh.
The diversity
That's so cool.
is amazing.
What were you doing there? That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard that one.
No, no, that was before my PhD.
Oh, okay.
We were there doing some sort of baseline surveys, everything from sea cucumbers to reef fish to looking at sharks and everything. And it's just, the way of life is totally amazing. It's very different.
Yeah.
And,
This is making me want to travel really bad.
Yes, so guys, when are we going? Where are we going?
I'm feeling particularly landlocked.
So who's got more field trips for their PhD? I'm out. I'm writing up.
I'm out. I'm done.
Okay.
I will be volunteering. I reckon.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Actually, on Monday, I was actually meant to be leaving to go do the whale shark trip again. So that is a really big, sad moment.
Oh no.
Oh no, that one's cancelled. No.
Yeah. Because you can't get up there, so that's really sad. But next year.
I need to get back to the US and then I can figure out.
You're stuck with us for a while longer, Sammy.
But yeah, hopefully September in Canada, which seems unlikely, but
That would be awesome.
Giant bluefin again, maybe.
Nice. Literally living the dream, Sammy.
Yeah, out of my field suitcase right now.
Yeah. It has its highs and lows, it's fine.
So does anyone want to share their most rewarding moment? Whether it's in the field or whether it's when you found out something?
Yeah, I remember my last trip of my PhD. It was always going to be the last trip. I had a lot of trips at the end, and my supervisor was like, "You're trained to the desk," and I was like, "One more." But the actual last one, I went to Indonesia to train a team from Conservation International how to use those camera tags I was using on the whale sharks there, and it was a really interesting place to work because there's a lot of whale sharks, but there's also a lot of problems. Like there's so much plastic pollution. Like I saw a whale shark throw up plastic, and they also get caught in these nets there. So that's around where I was tagging them, and just behind there is these big nets that target bait fish and often catch the whale sharks by accident. Anyway, I taught the team, and it was really fun to teach this team of these Indonesian guys who work for the government how to use these tags, and they were so interested and learned really quickly. And then at the end of the trip, we went to the local government department and kind of showed them the results of what was going on, and straight away they got in to a chat of how they can use these results and how they can use the footage for science communication and how to educate people with why to not catch them and why plastic's bad and not to just chuck your noodle package overboard. So it was really, really fulfilling and rewarding to be like, hey, I can actually see how this is going to help the whale shark in this particular area. Super cool.
That's so good.
So good. Yeah, that's amazing.
I think mine would be the day I put my first satellite tag on a manta. Not just because it was really exciting to have that milestone in my research, but that data is so important for mantas in that part of the Western Indian Ocean. the aggregations we know of so far are all so far from humans, and that makes it really hard to get photo IDs taken and to understand where they're moving. So the day that happened was the culmination of years of planning and permits and ordering equipment. And the manta that I tagged had an acoustic tag as well, which meant I could ground truth my data, which was something I never even banked on being able to do. And the culmination of all of that was getting a data set that's actually going to make a difference to marine spatial plans in Seychelles. And that's why I do what I do. So, yeah.
Well, it's already made a benefit, hasn't it?
Yeah.
There's a marine protected area there now.
Woo! Yeah. So, yeah, they announced a new marine spatial plan for Seychelles towards the end of March, and Dallas and St. Joseph are going to be included in that. So it was really excited to play a small role in getting that through and making a difference through science, and like being able to inform people on what's going on and direct future efforts as well, which is why I'm still involved with the project. We still have so much to do.
Fantastic. So we're going to have to start wrapping up soon, but if there's any more questions that anyone would like answered, now is your time to send them through. But while we're getting a few more of them, we've got one that says, so if your PhD is finished, what's next? The eternal question. Who wants to tackle that one?
Ooh.
I'm not finished.
I haven't finished yet.
Exactly.
Still going.
I guess there's a number of different routes you can take, but I got a postdoctoral research fellowship job, which is basically, I kind of do the same thing as I did during a PhD. I'm doing research on certain topics, but I fortunately get paid a bit better, which is very exciting. I can buy more than $10 wine.
That's your shot next, actually.
But yeah, like I've moved to California and I work for a university as well, but I do a lot of projects and work with different research groups and collaborate a lot more. And through your PhD, you open so many doors with collaboration. So you kind of still work with people you worked with during your PhD, but that's just one path you can go down. I think like Em and Lauren are currently working with the Department of, I don't know what the department's called.
Biodiversity, Conservations and Attractions.
Yeah.
That's been really great. I'm working with the monitoring team at the moment, and it's been so much fun getting to work with some really great people and to see these like long-term monitoring of Western Australia's marine parks has been really rewarding. Yeah, I'd recommend that path for sure. How about you, Lauren?
Yeah, no, the same. It's a daunting question. What do you do when your PhD is done? In short. But yeah, ultimately, I guess keep applying the skills that you've learned. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that we all want to make a difference, everyone who's on this panel. So any sort of opportunity you get to apply your skills and develop them further and learn more about the ecology of a species or the function of an ecosystem and share that not only with the general public, but make a difference in terms of long-term management so that future generations can enjoy it, for lack of a better way of describing it, I think is amazing, whether it's with the government or whether it's through a postdoc. Yeah, just to keep doing what we do, I think is the end goal.
The dream.
Can't believe I get paid to do what I do sometimes.
Yeah.
Really?
Not to mention all the stuff we do after work hours just because we want to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Like this.
Okay.
It's really nice.
So last question, what is the best shark?
Tiger shark.
Oh, that's controversial.
Oh, Sammy, that was so quick.
I go with Mako's. I love my
Great hammer.
little torpedoes. Hammers?
Great hammer.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a good
Yeah,
one.
Sorry, we've
I
got
have to go white shark.
just
I
one
think
last
I
audience
might go
one
with
really
white shark
quick.
as well.
I'm going to go whale
Flying-
shark to be different. They're
Flying
cute.
white sharks like nothing else.
One last really quick question, if we can answer this one quickly. How did we find a PhD? If anyone could just give tips on that.
Twitter is a really good place to look.
Yeah, I emailed
Talking to people. Yeah, same Lucy.
and I was like, I want to work with you. Have you got a project? And that's pretty much what I said. And then it was, for here, it's quite different. So you have to get, like, luckily, I think all of us got a scholarship to study here. So it's finding your supervisor, then finding the scholarship, and then it's kind of moving across the world for quite a lot of people. But yeah, just put yourself out there.
Yeah, read as much as you can about the person. Talk to their students and postdocs about what kind of supervisor they are as well. That's a really good insight. And just talk to everyone.
And if there's like an online, if it's like a posting for an opening, make sure you email them and contact them as well as applying to make sure that there's a bit of a connection between your application and you yourself. And so
and also talk to their current students and people, just to like I don't know, you don't know exactly what people are like, and they might be really tough to work for, or they might be really great but really, really busy. So it's good to talk to behind the scenes and be like, okay, should I get a different supervisor on top of that to like maybe who has a bit more time to spend with me?
Yeah, for sure.
Great words of advice. So any last tidbits?
Sharks are awesome.
Yay! Good call. Okay, so we
find your shark nerds.
We have to wrap things up now. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you, of course, to all the amazing shark scientists as well. This chat will be on the UWA Oceans Institute channel afterwards, so pass it on if you know anyone else would be interested in seeing it. There's also previous episodes on plastic pollution, coral reefs, underwater photography, and there will also be more to come. So any questions that weren't answered, you can connect via our Twitter handles, UWA Oceans Institute at UWA Oceans, or their Facebook or email. So thank you very much for your company, and don't forget to tune in to the next one next week. So bye for now. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.